This is the Mike McFeely Show. It is the Monday edition, October 15th. Gosh, halfway through October and only about 3 weeks till the elections, which to me is crazy. It seems like we've been talking about these things forever and ever, but we're getting close. Mark Altenburg, he is a city councilman in the city of Moorhead, obviously. A good friend of mine and a good friend of the Mike McFeely Show. I wanted to have you in, Mark, today. Welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks, Mike.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Wanted to have you in today because you guys tonight, I believe, are going to address further in your council meeting the tip credits in Moorhead, trying to get more restaurants, trying to make it more attractive for restaurants to locate in Moorhead. Tell us about this.
Yeah, we're going to put out a contract with Eide Bailey to actually do an analysis of the disparity in owning a restaurant in Moorhead versus Fargo as it pertains to the tip credit. And for those that don't know, if you run a restaurant in North Dakota, you can pay a sub-minimum wage as long as that wage is brought up to the minimum wage through tips.
And you want to get something like that going in Moorhead.
We do.
To make the playing field more equitable. Because I think one thing I've heard from people in the restaurant business is it's a heck of a lot easier to do business in Fargo than it is to do it in Moorhead because of the disparity in minimum wages.
Well, this is what we got to figure out, Mike. And is it tip credit or is there something else out there? And that's why we're going to go with Eide Bailey, who is the best of the best, to really take a look at restaurants in Fargo, restaurants in Moorhead, get into their books, hopefully, and take a look and say, is it tip credit or is it something else? Is it something else that Moorhead's doing or Minnesota's doing, which is putting more restaurants in Fargo than in Moorhead?
What's your sense? Do you think that it is the tip credit, or do you think there's something else going on here where Moorhead just can't seem to attract the restaurants like Fargo does?
Well, we've talked about it before, Mike. I really believe that it's traffic, that the more restaurants you have, the more restaurants you get. Because if you and I are going to go out to lunch, we're not going to drive out in the middle of nowhere to go have lunch. We're going to go where all the rest of the restaurants are. So if you have that retail base and that restaurant base, then you get people who are willing to come in and take that risk. There's no business more risky in America right now than running a restaurant or a bar. So the folks that do it want to know that they're going to have the traffic coming in. Now, what I'm hearing from business owners is it's the tip credit. I need to be able to take a look at that analysis and say, is it tip credit and what can we do? And here's why, Mike, because we're going to go to St. Paul. We're going to go to the legislature next year with Speaker Thiessen and Majority Leader Bach and say,
do you know something everybody else doesn't, Mark? Because right now they're in the minority.
Oh, that's right. That's right. So we're going to go forward next January and say we want a disparity credit. Now, this is different than a statewide tip credit. The Restaurant Association would like a statewide tip credit, just like 42 other states have in the United States. I don't think that's going to fly in Minnesota because folks in Alexandria and St. Cloud and Minneapolis aren't affected by North Dakota, Wisconsin, or Iowa. So we've got to figure a way to get some legislation that addresses the disparity between North Dakota and Minnesota. And we have some other programs that do the same thing. So really, we're threading the needle here. We're trying to figure out a way to get this disparity credit on the books without taking the wrath of the SEIU and not trying to make it a statewide credit at the same time.
So what a disparity credit would be specific to border cities?
Absolutely.
Moorhead, Breckenridge, East Grand Forks?
Yep. And then we'd have to reach out and say, okay, if you border Wisconsin, who has a tip credit, if you border Iowa, how can we get those legislators to agree to do this? Now, the key is saying to those legislators from Alexandria, from St. Cloud, from Minneapolis, this is in your benefit. This is going to be real tricky. This is going to be a tricky piece of legislation to move through. I've already been talking to legislators. I know my friends on the other side have been talking to legislators to try and see how we can move this forward. And we're going to have to make a really good case when we get down to St. Paul. And that's why this analysis is so vital, to have an independent analysis. It has to be spot on when we get down to St. Paul. We can't have the Service Employees Union coming forward and saying it's a bad report. We can't have the Restaurateurs Association coming forward and saying it's a bad report, or it ain't going nowhere. So we're going to put the money in and get the best, most objective report we can from Bailey.
Because I want more restaurants in Moorhead. Okay, that's the side of the river on which I live. Everybody knows that. I'm proud to live in Minnesota. I'm proud to be part of the Oakport Moorhead city over there. I'm looking forward to coming into the city of Moorhead in a couple of years here. But one thing I do worry about, Mark, is the people who work in restaurants.
Yep.
Okay, I mean, because you need to make a living.
Yep.
You need to have a good wage.
Yep.
You need to make some money. If your full-time job is going to be as a server in a restaurant in Moorhead, I want those people protected to make sure that they're not making $1.30 an hour. That's not fair.
No, and this is the legislators from the DFL that I've talked to, that's their number one concern, and candidates too. We want to make sure that single mom who's trying to put shoes on their kids and food on the table isn't going to get hurt by this. And I won't support anything that does hurt that server. So we're trying to figure out a business tax credit that would make it up for them as a disparity credit that wouldn't reduce the wages of our servers. Now, how are we going to do this? How is this going to frame up? We don't know. But we know that if we go into St. Paul and say we want a statewide tip credit, it's going to get shot down because it's been tried before and it hasn't gone anywhere. So we need to frame this as a competitive equalizer between North Dakota and Minnesota that's not going to affect the wages of servers.
How important is this in Moorhead? You guys have been working on this for a while, and I applaud you for that. And I know that it's a bipartisan effort, if you will. I know that city council seats aren't party identified, but the fact is that there's parties with the people who are on the city council. How important is it to the city of Moorhead to get more restaurants, to get things like this? Because it's been something that's been on the front burner here for a long time.
When I went door to door, when Mike Hewlett went door to door, when Nancy Otto went door to door last year, it's people's number 2 concern. Number 1 is flood control. Mm-hmm. Number 2 is getting more restaurants in Moorhead. I heard it over and over again. Where's my steakhouse? Where's my pancake house? They want to stay in Moorhead, spend their money in Moorhead, be able to bring the family to a restaurant in Moorhead. And luckily, over the last few years, Wild Wings has come in. We've had JL Beers come in. Mm-hmm. We lost Bennigan's. That wasn't really about Moorhead, but it was about something else. So that's what people want, and they really have this desire. So we're throwing the kitchen sink. Last week, we did a property tax exemption, up to an 8-year property tax exemption. We did a sales tax credit up to $25,000 for new restaurants coming in, and now we're going to go to the legislature and try and get this tip credit. We're throwing the kitchen sink in. If you are interested in opening a restaurant in the metro area anytime soon, it would be to your advantage to go to Moorhead and use that as your comparison when you're doing your analysis, because you go talk to Pete Dahl in the city of Moorhead, you're going to find that the doors are open and people are willing to work with you. I mean, we're throwing everything we can at it. I'm
doing my part because I saw on Facebook today that there's actually a restaurant bar owner in Bismarck who's looking to expand to the Fargo-Moorhead area. I made a pitch to him both on Facebook and via text and said, hey, look at Moorhead, Pooley, before you build a restaurant over in Fargo. So I'm doing my part.
That's what we need. And this is what we ran into last week is when Brenda took this off consent and the forum covered it, and then we had KVLY. We're trying to reach out to business owners and say, if you've been overlooking Moorhead, you've got a golden opportunity. We don't know how long this is going to last, but it would be in your best interest to come to Moorhead and talk to us right now, because you're probably not going to see this deal around forever. But we're willing to work with the next few restaurants that come in are going to have a sweetheart deal, once in a decade deal.